But yeah, there were a lot of things that were said, a lot of things that were done that made me feel very insecure about myself and in this world. Both my parents would, well, my mom in particular would wake me up when she was drunk, and she would hit me, and she would say, "I'm going to go commit suicide," and drive off when I was a teenager. And I didn't know whether she was going to live or die. So you could imagine the impact that would have on me as far as dysregulating my nervous system, as far as what my value as a human being is. So it's truly a miracle for me to sit here and be like, I love me, but I also don't expect myself to be perfect. And I spend my life healing others, so very grateful.
Hey everybody, it's Pastor Tom of the 24 Today podcast. I have Dr. Barbara Lowe with me here, and Dr. Barbara is one that has been through a lot of stuff in her life, and out of that, she is able to talk from experience and help so many different people. So if you're a person today and you're struggling, life isn't going well, let me say I'm right there with you, and probably Dr. Barbara is as well. Because life is really, really, really tough. If you're facing pain, if you're facing loss, if you're dealing with trauma, abuse, just whatever it might be, listen in today, because somehow I believe that we're going to touch on something that's going to be of value to you. Dr. Barbara, welcome to the podcast.
I'm so excited to be here, Pastor Tom.
Thank you so much. Dr. Barbara, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you work, live, family, so forth.
Sure. Well, let's start out where I am now, and then you can dig around in my past the way I dig around in other people's past.
I appreciate that.
So where I am now is I'm 48. I am a mother and a stepmother. I live in Durham, Chapel Hill area of North Carolina. I own a practice called Greenleaf Psychological and Support Services, where I have about 12 clinicians, about 15 employees, and we spend our days healing lives. We see adults, we see children, we see families, we see couples, we do evaluations, we do group therapy. And we're just here for our community. We love our community. And we also take good care of one another as a team. I also have a social media presence and a national platform that is my Dr. Barbara platform. And through that, I do podcasting, I do blogging and vlogging, and we are just about to launch a course called Hearts Returning Home, where women can come and listen to this course and really have their traumas transformed into rivers of living water, into purpose, where they can have real hope. And to be honest with you, it's cost me my life to have this course, all the training I've had as a licensed psychologist, as a life coach, as a lay minister, and then everything that I've ever come in my own life, I'm putting into this course to really help others be able to get there before they're 48 or after they're 48, depending on where they're starting.
And you can find Dr. Barbara Lowe at drbarbaralowe.com. And she is a licensed psychologist, life coach, lay minister, mom, other things that are going on in her life as well. Dr. Barbara, you help men and women, but you really have a heart and real passion for women when it comes to helping them deal with loss and trauma and deep disappointment, rejection, neglect, so forth. What is it, I guess, in you that really causes you to just want to reach out to the heart of a woman and really help her?
Well, let's see. It was about a year ago when the Lord was really putting on my heart. I was spending time with Him, and I had this profound sense of God wanted to snap women into place, and that if there had been a plan of the enemy to basically, let's see, in one of the latest Marvel movies, one of the guys, and I'm sorry, I don't remember all their names, but his gun turned into a bubble gun. And that's what the enemy wants to do to women, is kind of enemy's been trying to tamp women down, keep them in these stuck places where they're recycling into from one crisis to another, feeling overwhelmed, feeling off purpose, off center. And the Lord wants to bring women into purpose. One of the ways that I believe the Lord wants to do that is by clearing up the past. We have so many hurts. There are so many women that grew up as adult child of whatever, right? Could be alcoholic, adult child of a hoarder, adult child of someone who struggled with mental illness, adult child of a sex addict, adult child of multiple divorces. And I don't have judgment there, by the way. I myself have been through an unwanted divorce, but we have these wounds, and the Lord wants to heal them. And this is what I'm all about. This is what I love doing. And we often, when we get to a place in life, we want to give away what we've been given. And I've been given much.
On your website, drbarbaralowe.com, you say, and I'm quoting here, "It is okay to be flawed. In fact, it is our flaws that make us fabulous." Can you tell me more about that?
So I have to say, I'm a recovering, or mostly recovered, I would say, perfectionist. So back before I was saved, I was 19. When I got saved, I was a hot mess, much more mess than hot. And coming out of this home where I was abused, and coming out of some eating disorders and some addictive behaviors. And I had barely graduated high school because I spent part of my last year in high school where I was kicked out of the home because my mother was an alcoholic and she had these drunken rages. And so my senior year was tough. My high school years were tough because of all the addiction going on around me, and then also some of my own choices, I'm sure. And so I thought I was stupid. Well, once I started getting my life together and I gave my life to Christ and he was putting my life back together, I applied to go to school, and I ended up going to a good state college here, and I was valedictorian. I was class rank 1 out of 7,000 something. So you can see I flipped it around from, being a hot mess or more mess than hot to trying to get everything perfect or get everything just right. I mean, I graduated with straight A's. So yes, thank you, Lord. He has given me a brain, but a lot of that was effort too. And now I've moved on. I've gotten a doctorate. I'm 48. My children have been a great humbling factor for me. But the truth is, I don't want to be great anymore. I actually strive to be average with streaks of greatness. I'm sitting here. I have one of my legs cocked up. I have a couple beverages sitting beside me. I'm just here being me. And when I have clients come in, I just say, this is who I am. This is how I do things. And I realize it may or may not be a match. I tend to not be very competitive with other practice owners because I know that they are flawed but fabulous. And I'm flawed but fabulous. And we each are fabulous or gifted in our own unique ways. And it's okay to finally rest in who I am and who God made me, knowing what my strengths and weaknesses are, building on my strengths rather than my weaknesses, and being wrapped up in this self-acceptance and this God acceptance. It is so relieving, Mr. Tom, relieving.
So fabulous doesn't mean perfect.
Mm-mm.
What does it mean?
It means being uniquely me. It means being really humble. Humility sometimes sounds like a bad word or like a painful word, but real humility just feels actually really good because we don't think too much of ourselves and we don't think too little of ourselves. It's just right in that sweet spot. And so we know what our strengths are, we know what our weaknesses are, and we're just walking with the Lord. I'm nothing more and nothing less than a person walking with Jesus. And he's going to deal with the things in my life that it's time to deal with. I don't need to be my own stoplight, stop, start, do this, handle this. I don't need to be my own coach. I have a coach who's full of grace. And I can be okay while I'm on my way. I am also very growth oriented. So I don't just lay around, eating Doritos and M&Ms and watching TV all the time. I do sometimes, but I just I relax in that acceptance.
restate what you said earlier? Something to the effect of you strive to be average with.
Yeah, with streaks of greatness.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, because then when you're great, Pastor Tom, people are like, whoa, that was great. But if you're great all the time, people expect it all the time. That is way too much pressure for me.
No one says be average.
I know. When I say that, especially in Christian realms, honestly, they're like, what are you talking about? We strive for excellence, And the truth is, I mean, I'm not an undermotivated person.
Right, sure.
I'm on purpose. Like, you know what I mean by on purpose? Like, I'm in my purpose. I'm in that flow. I'm doing what I'm called to do. And I love what I do. So I would call myself probably on the more ambitious side, but there's so much grace to make mistakes. I'm not trying to make mistakes. I'm not trying to be subpar, but I'm okay with where I'm at while I'm on my way. For example, you had mentioned I have a podcast. I don't try to have it be perfect. As a matter of fact, I'm a psychologist who's sitting here talking about my flaws. That in of itself is like an oxymoron, right? Don't self-disclose very easily.
You talked about your mom being an alcoholic, and one of the results of that for you was that you ended up feeling stupid. Right? How did that happen? I mean, so those two are related, your mom's alcoholism and things that she did or said?
I think so. I think part of it too was that I just didn't have very much self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is the feeling that I can have a positive impact on myself and my world. I didn't have very much self-confidence. I had a lot of body shame. I remember she used to say things like, "You're such an Amazon," meaning I'm too tall, too big. 'Cause I'm like I was like 5'8" back then. I've shrunk to 5'7". But and there were just mean things that she would say. Now, by the grace of God, the year before she died, she actually told me she was sorry, and I never thought I would hear that, or say that, and it was very healing. And of course, I forgive her. But there were a lot of things that were said, a lot of things that were done that made me feel very insecure about myself and in this world. Both my parents would, my mom in particular would wake me up when she was drunk, and she would hit me, and she would say, "I'm going to go commit suicide," and drive off when I was a teenager. And I didn't know whether she was going to live or die. So you could imagine the impact that would have on me as far as dysregulating my nervous system, as far as what my value as a human being is. So it's truly a miracle for me to sit here and be like, I love me, but I also don't expect myself to be perfect. And I spend my life healing others, so I'm very grateful.
How much anger did you have toward your mom? And unforgiveness, how did you deal with that? And if she had not have had that moment where she said, "I'm sorry," do you think you could have gotten over that? I mean, that's probably not a good word, but
no, that's a great. I can answer that just as you said. That's perfect. So yes, because I had forgiven my mom a long time before, and I wasn't expecting her. She was very sick. She died of colon cancer about 3 years ago. And I had not expected that. I had long ago forgiven her. Early in my Christian walk, I'd had mentors that taught me how to really take a moral inventory, kind of 12-step way, even though I'm not really, I'm a big supporter of the 12-step groups, but I'm not in one. But the 12-step way. And so I looked at my resentments. I looked at who I was resentful toward, why I resented them, what they did, how that affected me. And I used Maslow's hierarchy, something like that. Or that's what I do in my course. I take people through this in my course, a forgiveness module. So we look on Maslow's hierarchy, how that affected me. Did it affect my need for love and security, for self-actualization, for safety? And then I looked at my part in it. And what I saw when I looked at my part with my mom, with my dad, who was also an addict, with everyone else in my family was that there was this theme of this fear of rejection, and then there were themes of selfishness and some other pieces. So I was able to see that I had a part in where I was now, just like they had a part in what they created. Another strategy I've used is, two strategies, is the older I get, the easier it is to put myself in someone else's shoes, because I've failed myself, right? I've not been a perfect parent. I've been a good parent. I wish, for my kids' sake, that's probably the one area I wish I could have been perfect. But I can put myself in her shoes. And the other piece is praying for those who persecute you. That's more than just people who persecute our faith. We pray for others. We're surrendering to God's love. And in that, we are healed.
Would you tell me, I know this is deeply personal, but could you tell me about that moment in which she apologized and how that happened and what was going on in her? That was a big step, big moment in her life. I mean, what happened that happened?
Well, let me back up and tell you that 2 years prior to that, or about 2.25 years prior to that, I was with my son at my mom's house. She was sick with cancer, but she was doing well. And she got mad at something I said, and she said, "Barbara, get out," the way she used to when I was a teenager. And she kicked me out of her house again. And I said, "Mom, I love you and I forgive you, but you're going to have to contact me this time if you want a relationship with me. My whole life, you've kicked me out. You've acted like I'm the one who's done something wrong. And I've been the one who's come groveling back every time. And I'm not going to do that this time." I didn't talk to her for 2 years. Yeah. But it broke something in me, because my whole life I was always holding on to others more than they were holding on to me. I think this is part of why I've been through divorce. I'm now very happily married, by the way. There's a very happy ending to that story. But so I was holding on more than she was holding on to me. And she wasn't very good at holding on to me. And it really broke something off me. So one time I was visiting my brother who lives close to her. And he said, "Barbara, do you really believe that Mom is capable of reaching out to you?" And that got to me. And I said, call her and tell her that I'll be at my niece's birthday party. And if she wants to come, I want her to come. Well, you know what? She showed up. And so that was very significant to me. She showed up. And she threw out a couple barbs, but at the end she said, "Come back, Barbara." So she wanted me to come back again. And that was the beginning of us talking again. And I honestly think that the reconciliation we had at the end would not have happened possibly if I hadn't stood my ground on it. And I know some people would say that doesn't sound Christian, but for me, I believe that the Lord led me into that. And that was a year of tremendous upheaval of dealing with things about my relationship with my mother, my own personal heart. Well, one time after that, I was sitting in the hospital talking with her, and she began to talk about God some. So she was going through a reconciliation also, I believe, with God, because I wasn't raised Christian. And I said, "What is God speaking to you, Mom? What has he been talking to you about lately?" Just to see what she would say. And she said, "What do you mean?" And she got defensive, like I was trying to make her admit to something. And I said, "Oh, Mom, I just mean, what is he saying to you? Like, this is what he's been saying to me. And I was just wanting to hear about what your walk with God is like." And she said, "Well, actually, I believe he's telling me to tell you I'm sorry." It was so amazing. So I just said, "You know what, Mom? We've all made mistakes. I love you. It's all forgiven." So she wasn't specific, and I don't know really what she remembers and doesn't remember, because she would black out. She would get blackout drunk a lot. But I never thought I'd hear that. So that was very powerful.
Could you sum up those steps of forgiveness again? I remember one was prayer. One, incredibly, was trying to put yourself somehow in their position to, in some way, try to identify with who they are and why they do what they do.
Yeah.
I think there, I know there was one more. Was there a couple more?
Well, I took the inventory and I looked at my part in it.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
which is interesting because you said that it's they created it, your mom created it, but yet you have a role in it in that it's up to you to do with whatever they created. Is that?
Yeah, if I've narrated my life around rejection, it's like if someone comes over and makes a mess in my house and leave, it's still a mess in my house. It's still on my property. And I can just be mad that that mess is there, but I can't make them come back over and clean that up. So it's in my house and I need to clean it up because it's hurting me. So yeah, taking the inventory, making amends where I need to make amends, making amends to myself where I need to make amends, forgiving myself, and beginning to change the narrative of my story. I've also learned and thought about my mom's story and my dad's story. They both grew up in alcoholic homes. Um, and my mom saw very difficult things that her father did to my uncle. And yeah, so I can put myself in her shoes and see where she was recreating some trauma. I also know some other things about her history where she was assaulted in a couple different ways. So that helps me. And then the forgiveness piece, praying for those that have hurt us, praying for those where there's an emotional stuckness to that resentment. The only way I know how to get free of that is praying for those people. I had someone I prayed for who I had like an obsessive resentment against because this person was messing with my family. And so I began to pray for that person for 10 things I wanted most in my life. And I don't mean like material things. I mean like the things you want to look back at your deathbed and say, I had these things, right? Love.
You prayed for that person to receive those things
Yeah.
you wanted?
Yeah, but here's the funny thing. I was praying more for me because I was tired of having resentment. Those things began to happen in that person's life, and I was happy for them. I had surrendered to God's love. The funny thing is I hadn't even thought these things might happen. I was just trying to get free from resentment. We ended up being friends. So
it's hard for people to remain your enemy when you pray for them, isn't it? I mean, even just the act of praying, even if it feels so mechanical at first, just that act somehow says you don't want them to be your enemy, or they're not as much as your enemy as they were yesterday or something. I mean, there's something powerful in praying for the person that might be your enemy.
yeah.
So, Dr. Barbara, you come out of the abusive upbringing, and then your first marriage doesn't work out, and I'm sure that the feelings of being stupid come back, the feelings of being rejected.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So when I went through divorce, I did those inventories again. Actually, I went back to that as a strategy, and I looked at what I was going through with my husband or ex-husband over time, and I did those columns again, and I looked at my part in it. And I also reflected back where I added another column, which was where is this coming from even more so than from him. And what I discovered is the hurt that I was going through was more about the stuff from my childhood than it was about him. Because I ultimately I had a habit of repeating this pattern of being in relationship with someone who didn't love me or couldn't love me. And so I was repeating a pattern that I felt in childhood. And I had to look at that, acknowledge that, and come out of that to really be free and forgive. And actually, I can say that he and I have a good relationship now as far as co-parenting.
Let's take just a breather here, just for a moment. We've been talking about some pretty really heavy stuff, personal stuff. Let's talk a little bit about your website, and then we're going to get right back in to more of the questions in the interview. Your website's a great website, drbarbaralowe.com. Can you tell us about some of the things that people can?
Yeah, so, well, pretty soon we're going to have our Hearts Returning Home course on there. I have my podcasts on there. We have some vlogs and blogs, and we're going to be increasing the production of in those areas. We do retreats. We'll be having upcoming retreats, and I also do intensives where people come in and get a lot of my attention over the course of a weekend. They have to fly in here, Pastor Tom, because I am licensed in North Carolina, and if I'm anything, I'm ethical. So, definitely I have to practice psychology in North Carolina. But it's a luxurious weekend, and we have packages where people can get some spa services, not for me, local spa, and give people wonderful resources, and then follow up on the back end to make sure they're getting what they need at home.
And they can find that now on your site, or?
Yeah, they can find those things I talked about. The Hearts Returning Home. If people are interested in the Hearts Returning Home course, which is the best way to get the most of me for the least amount of money, because it's 10 or 11 hours of so much of what I know that's packed into a course. Normally an hour with me is $150 for local people, and this is going to be around the $350 range for this course. And even if you live around here, I have a wait list. So I want to create this so that more people can have access to it. Connect with me and get on my put in your email, and then you'll be on my email list. I send out maybe 2 emails a week and release a podcast a week. And I'm always feeding this healing information to my list. I really pray for people on my list. It's like, I'll say, I've been thinking about you today. And sometimes people email me back and they say, was that to me or to everyone? I said, it's to the people on the list, but it's to you. It is to you, because I've been thinking about this group of people and praying for you. So, yeah.
On one of your vlogs, you have a statement that says, "We are all weird."
Yeah. So one of the things I do like talking about is imposter syndrome. I think we all have bits of it. And we judge our insides. We compare our insides to other people's highly edited outsides. And social media, I love social media. It's done a lot for us, but we also need to realize that most people have a very highly edited portrait that they're putting out of themselves. I mean, I know people who have severe depression, and if you looked at their feed, they just look like their life is bliss, right? Not clients, because I wouldn't be on their Facebook feed, but friends. And yeah, so we need to be really careful. And we also need to know that we all have really weird, at times inappropriate thoughts. We all want to touch the wet paint, like that's well established, right? Most of us want to pick the M&Ms out of the trail mix, right? I do, and I will if no one's looking. So we all have weird thoughts, and we need to not judge ourselves based on that. We all have hard times. Even thoughts of, I wish I weren't here, that can be a normal part of either grieving or depression. We don't act on that. We don't dwell on that. But though we have symptoms, it's the root of our symptoms is humanity. And, we're in this big humanity soup together, and we're all weird. No one is normal. People are normal until you get to know them, and then everyone's a little weird, a little quirky.
I loved what you said. Could you restate it again? Something to the effect of, we judge our insides based on people's outsides or something
Yeah,
stated in
so
form?
what I'm presenting now, even though I'm trying to be very authentic, is still an edited view of myself. I'm not saying every thought that comes to mind, right? Like there's a red truck I'm looking at outside, I'm not talking about that. Or if I have a worry flash through my head about my son or something going on, I'm not gonna put that out there to everyone usually. And so what we see from other people is a highly edited view of them, whether they're talking and especially normally what they're putting on Facebook or social media. That's why I try to have pictures on social media sometimes of me with no makeup on and stuff like that, just to be average with streaks of greatness, right? Um, but we judge our insides. We know every single flaw we have. We know every single mistake we've made. We know every single faux pas we've executed. Yeah. We judge all that against other people's outsides. And that's not fair.
Is there a uniqueness to the fears that a woman has compared to a man, or not? I mean, I know man, I have fears, that's for sure. But are there some unique things that women?
I think sometimes women have a little bit more fear when it comes to relationships, and we think about relationships a little bit more than men. I mean, our brain, our corpus callosum, is a little bit more networked and knit together, and hormonally, the way we're structured, we're a little bit more structured towards some bonding behaviors. But I think that men, and I try to encourage women to this regard. I think men get a bad rap. Women often expect men to pursue them and to be valiant, and we're fed this from fairy tales, really. And men have the same insecurities as women. So like I see some single people and I talk to them about, especially single women, you've got to throw out, for example, some flirts to these guys. They need to have some confidence that you want them to ask you out, because it is hard. The same way you would feel if you were risking rejection is the same way they feel. And so I think that fears are different, but I think men and women sometimes different, but men and women have a lot of the same fears. And even when they are different types of fears, there's probably the same amount of fear in men and women. Women can tend to ruminate a little bit more, and that's something that women do need to work on. You know, not letting something run over and over in your brain, knowing when to kind of put it to bed. That's forgiven, that's done, letting that go. But I think as a society we're a little too hard on men, and there needs to be more space for men to express fear and work on fears, and to still be built up and admired at the same time while being a real human being. And my husband and I have a great relationship, and he's really learned in our relationship to be able to express some of those things. And he knows that I'm still going to love and respect and admire him and see him in an amazing way. And I think as women, we need to give men that. Now, I'm not sure if that's where you wanted me to go with that question. I'm not sure if that's where you wanted me to go with that. That's what comes to mind. That's what comes to mind.
Sure. Just a reminder, I'm Pastor Tom. This is the 24 Today podcast, and you can find me at 24today.org or tomwhitesel.com. I also have a Facebook site, 24 Today. It's an inspirational video site. And my guest is Dr. Barbara Lowe, and you can find her at drbarbaralowe.com. You can Google her. You can find her name coming up in different places, and just find so many helpful things from her. Dr. Barbara, let's head down now to the home stretch here just for a few more moments. On your website, you make this statement, and I quote, "I feel the gift in you. I see that you can become a phoenix, reborn into something fierce and beautiful." Can you share what that means? And then perhaps just in general, a story of someone that you've known that has become a phoenix.
Well, I love the metaphor of the phoenix. So the phoenix goes back to many, many ancient cultures, including the Israeli culture, for those listening who are of a Christian background. And the phoenix is the metaphor is about a bird that, and some of the stories talk about the bird kind of getting burnt out, actually, and going off by himself. And this bird goes down in smoke and ashes and flame. Like, it is a real death. It's not like, by faith I'm dying. It is a real combustion death. So this bird does touch into real death, but gets its energy from the sun, the sun, and resurrects. And this bird has the power to resurrect as many times as it needs to. Every death for this bird, every death is followed by a resurrection. And the phoenix, the stories of the phoenix tell us that in the phoenix's tears is the power to heal anything. And the phoenix's talons are strong enough to carry elephants. So there's great strength and healing after this resurrection. And I want to say to your listeners, my friend, you are the phoenix. But to be the phoenix, we do have to touch into what's real and what's authentic. There might be a time of grief. And I know, Pastor Tom, you've shared about your time of going down in smoke and ashes and combustion. I want to say to the listeners, Pastor Tom, you're the phoenix. You're the story of the phoenix. And God is calling your listeners to be the phoenix. Thank you. So excited to be here.
Thank you. If this podcast has been helpful for you and you haven't already subscribed, just go to the subscribe button that you'll see on the page and subscribe. That way you'll make sure that you get everything that I put on the podcast the moment that it's available. And if it's helpful for you, it probably would be helpful for someone that you know as well. If you could send them a link or tell them about the podcast, and then also comment on the particular podcast wherever you're at. Rate it, if you will, and that will help others to be able to see and hear about the podcast.